My name is Ruby Bennett, 31 years old, and I've spent most of my life being the reliable one. The daughter who answers every call, fixes every problem, and absorbs every family drama so no one else has to. My husband, Andrew, often jokes that I'm the human Swiss Army knife of our extended family, though he says it with love in his eyes and a shake of his head that mixes admiration with exasperation. Our son, Leo, had just turned 1, and for the past week, I'd been consumed by frosting recipes, miniature sandwiches, and tiny paper crowns that would make him feel like a king for the day. The house smelled like vanilla and fresh plastic balloons, tied in cheerful blue and yellow, swaying gently in the air conditioning draft. Andrew was labeling jars of berries and puffs, humming along to a playlist that seemed determined to make everything feel lighter than it was. I moved through the kitchen, arranging forks, wiping crumbs, and trying to ignore the knot in my stomach that had been growing every time my phone buzzed. It was the family group chat, the digital stage where love, manipulation, and passive aggression collided in equal measure. Mom, reminder, tomorrow is what time again? I typed back, noon. We said noon. Bianca, we'll see what we can do. The twins have so much going on. It's Leo's first birthday, I typed. Dad, Ruby, don't guilt people. The message scrolled onto my screen. I stared at it, the words feeling like a knife wrapped in silk. I'd mailed invitations. I'd double-checked schedules. I'd even bought decaf coffee because Bianca said caffeine made her shaky. But none of that mattered. Andrew squeezed my arm. Brief, he whispered. It's fine. But I knew it wasn't fine. I'd learned over the years that hope is stubborn, and that sometimes you cling to it even when it's bleeding you dry. At 11:58 the next afternoon, I lined up the tiny crowns on the table. Andrew stuck a single candle into the snowdrift cake I'd spent hours frosting. Our friends had already arrived, sleepy babies in tow, sticky and sweet. The doorbell didn't ring. Noon came and went. 12:17. My phone lit up. Mom, hi, sweetheart. We're not going to make it. Something came up. What came up? My voice was flat, brittle. A commitment. Don't be dramatic, she typed. A minute later, Bianca chimed in. Busy. Andrew saw my face, taut with disbelief, and whispered, Do we still sing? We still sing, I replied. And so we did. Leo clapped at the candle flame, enthralled by his own small power. I smiled for the camera, but my chest felt like a pulled muscle, tight and bruised. After the guests left and Leo fell asleep, I opened Instagram. Mom had posted a boomerang of Bianca's kids in Hawaii, perfectly sunlit, matching swimsuits and all. She had tagged a luxury resort. Caption, Memories that matter. Not Leo's cake, not his laughter, not us. I leaned against Andrew, who held my hand silently. You okay? I swallowed hard. Sure. That night, after cleaning frosting smears and folding the banner back into its creases, my phone rang again. Dad. I let it go to voicemail and pressed play. Ruby, the loan payments haven't been made, his voice said, calm but sharp. I stared at the ceiling, the string of balloons swaying above me like lazy jellyfish. Then I called back. Don't contact me about trivial matters, I said, and set the phone down. Andrew raised an eyebrow. What? I said slowly. That's the last time I let them set the story. Sleep didn't come easily, though I didn't cry either. I lay in the dark, Leo breathing softly in the monitor beside me, feeling something click inside, a cold, simple clarity. Tomorrow, I would stop being the help desk, the ATM, the unpaid debt collector. The memory of that loan was sharp. 3 years ago, my parents had called me to frame a conversation like adults. Bianca's business venture had floundered, and my parents had taken out a consolidation loan in their names to prevent her from drowning financially. They wanted me as co-signer. You've always been good with money, Mom had said, placing her hand over mine. No, I said, no. But Dad leaned back, exhaling, and said, We did everything for you. I remembered seeing the crib and the stack of bills in my mind. I saw my 14-year-old self mowing lawns to buy my own track shoes. I remembered believing, year after year, that if I just covered the small stuff, the family would be grateful. That belief was a lie I had swallowed like bitter medicine. The year went by. Payments were late twice. I kept covering them under the guise of protecting my credit score. Meanwhile, the small help requests multiplied. Twins needed car seats? I bought them. Dad's alternator failed? I paid the mechanic. Mom needed Wi-Fi upgraded? I did it. She promised repayment. She never did. On paper, I looked fine. In reality, I was tired, angry, but quieter than rage, a resentment that sat heavy like a chair I couldn't move. 2 months before Leo's birthday, Bianca called, playful as ever. What colors for the twins' early Mother's Day photos? Beachy neutrals or jewel tones? Beachy neutrals, I replied, because any answer would be a trap. And Mom for Leo's party? She asked. I rolled my eyes. Send her the date again? She acts surprised every time. Her laugh, clipped, was infuriating. You're so needy, she said. It wasn't need, it was justice. By the morning of the party, the tone was clear. The people who should have shown up would not. And as I arranged Leo's tiny crowns and frosting, I knew exactly what I had to do. Tomorrow I would stop being everything for everyone else. Because sometimes the hardest love is the love you owe yourself. The sting of that phone call lingered, but the memory of why it mattered stretched back years. 3 years ago, when I was 28, my parents had framed a small favor as an adult conversation. Bianca's boutique, her dream, had failed after 6 months. Suppliers demanded payment, rent piled up, and interest rates soared. My parents had taken out a consolidation loan under their names and, naturally, expected me to co-sign, or worse, to cover the monthly payments. I remember that diner vividly. Sticky menus, the faint scent of fried eggs, coffee that was too bitter, and the quiet determination in Andrew's eyes as he sat across from me. Dad cleared his throat like he was about to give a speech. It's just a small thing, he said, words designed to soften the blow. Mom reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. You've always been good with money, she said. I had said no, 3 times, firmly. The third time, I realized that no was not enough. Dad leaned back, sighing, and said, We did everything for you. It was the same line they'd used since I was a child whenever I resisted their whims, their manipulations. But this wasn't about gratitude. It was about survival. For me, for my future, and for the life Andrew and I were trying to build with Leo. Andrew never said much, but his presence was steady, a quiet reminder that my sense of obligation didn't have to come at the cost of my own life. Yet I signed. Not because I believed in their plan, but because at that moment I simply wanted the conversation to end. The year that followed was a lesson in invisible labor. Payments were occasionally late, but I kept covering them, convincing myself I was protecting my credit. And each time I did, I felt a small twist of resentment coil in my stomach, a quiet, unrelenting presence. Bianca, of course, didn't see any of it. To her, life was still easy, fun, and full of Instagrammable moments. The twins needed a car seat? I bought it. Dad's alternator died? I covered the mechanic. Wi-Fi at Mom's house was too slow? I upgraded the plan and added them to streaming accounts. Every act of help was taken for granted. On paper, I appeared generous and reliable. In reality, I was a woman balancing a full-time job, a household, and an endless stream of familial obligations, all while feeling invisible. Andrew, ever patient, would watch me work through it with quiet concern, sometimes placing his hand over mine as a silent lifeline. Then there was the emotional tax. My parents' subtle favoritism toward Bianca was unmistakable. They celebrated her wins like they were monumental, excused her mistakes as part of her charm, and rarely acknowledged the sacrifices I made. Every small omission, every birthday missed, every social media post I wasn't tagged in, added to the ledger of quiet betrayals. 2 months before Leo's birthday, Bianca called me from her office, which doubled as a playroom for the twins. Hey, Ruby, what color should the twins wear for Mom's early Mother's Day photos? Beachy neutrals or jewel tones? Beachy neutrals, I said, wary. Any answer I gave would be twisted into a trap. And can you remind Mom about Leo's party date? She keeps acting surprised when I mention it. I let out a bitter laugh. It's a birthday, not a circus act. You're so needy, Bianca teased. No, not needy. Justice, recognition, respect. That was what I craved. Not just for myself, but for Leo, who deserved a family that could show up without games, excuses, or social media facades. By the time Leo's birthday arrived, my decision had crystallized. I would no longer be the family's help desk, their financial cushion, their 24/7 problem solver. Andrew supported me quietly as I arranged the decorations, the cake, the gifts. I felt a clarity I hadn't known in years. The next week, I began executing my plan. Autopay for the loan was stopped. Shared streaming and phone accounts were restructured. Simple, quiet steps that required no announcements, no explanations, just firm boundaries. For the first time, I felt free. Not reckless, not vengeful, just free. The burden of obligation, of invisible labor, of being the family's safety net was no longer mine to carry. And in that freedom, I recognized a strange, exhilarating truth. Boundaries are love too. Love for oneself, love for Andrew, love for Leo. I spent that week observing the subtle reactions of my parents and Bianca. Confusion, mild panic, and eventual attempts at persuasion came in texts, calls, and social media nudges. But I remained resolute. No payment, no tech support, no guilt. Because some lessons have to be learned the hard way. And I had learned mine. The morning of Leo's birthday felt like standing at the edge of a storm that had been gathering for years. Balloons swayed gently in the air, the cake gleamed on the counter, and Andrew hummed a tune that felt more like a prayer than a song. Our small living room had transformed into a kingdom of firsts. Tiny paper crowns lined up for the children, jars of berries and puffs neatly labeled, and miniature sandwiches arranged like treasures. I kept checking my phone, though I knew it was futile. They wouldn't come. Noon came and went. Then 12:17. My phone buzzed. "Mom, hi, sweetheart. We're not going to make it. Something came up." "What came up?" I typed, my fingers trembling despite my effort to stay calm. "A commitment. Don't be dramatic," her reply scrolled into view. And then Bianca, ever so succinct, wrote, "Busy." Andrew looked at me, silent support in his eyes. "Do we still sing?" "We still sing," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted. And so we did. Leo clapped at the candle flame, fascinated by the flickering light, by the power in his own tiny hands. I smiled at him, hiding the ache in my chest, the hollow spot left by the absence of the people who should have been there. Later, after the guests had left and Leo had fallen asleep, I scrolled through Instagram. Mom had posted a boomerang of Bianca's kids in Hawaii, sun-kissed and joyous, with the caption, "Memories that matter." Not Leo, not his first cake, not our family. Andrew leaned against me, voice soft. "You okay?" I swallowed tight and dry. "Sure." But I wasn't, not really. The words "memories that matter" felt like a taunt, a reminder of everything I'd carried alone for years. The next call was Dad. I let it go to voicemail, then pressed play. "Ruby, the loan payments haven't been made," he said, voice carefully measured. I stared at the ceiling, the string of balloons above drifting lazily in the air conditioning draft. Then I called back. "Don't contact me about trivial matters," I said, setting the phone down with finality. Andrew raised an eyebrow. "What?" "That's it," I said slowly. "No more. I'm done being the help desk, the ATM, the unpaid problem solver." Sleep was uneasy that night, but I didn't cry. I lay beside Andrew, listening to Leo's soft breathing through the monitor, feeling a strange, cold clarity settle over me. I knew exactly what I had to do. The backstory of that loan was never trivial. 3 years ago, when Bianca's boutique failed, my parents had taken out a consolidation loan to cover her mistakes, expecting me to shoulder part of the burden. I had refused, multiple times. Yet over the years, I had still paid the late fees, the minor emergencies, the small favors that added up to a lifetime of resentment. The year went on. Payments were late twice. I covered them under the guise of protecting my credit score. Meanwhile, the small tasks multiplied. Car seats, mechanics, Wi-Fi upgrades, and the invisible labor of ensuring their lives ran smoothly. By the time Leo's birthday rolled around, my patience had worn thin. My decision was resolute, no more. Auto pay for the loan was canceled. Shared streaming accounts were restructured. Phone plans separated. Quiet, firm, boundary-driven moves that I didn't announce, didn't justify, and didn't apologize for. When my parents and Bianca realized what had happened, panic set in. Calls, texts, social media hints, and guilt trips began trickling in, but I held my ground. Andrew was there, silent anchor in the chaos. Leo was there, pure and unknowing, teaching me that life could be joyful even when the world failed to show up. By the end of the week, I could see the subtle reactions, confusion, mild frustration, and eventually recognition that I would no longer be the default lifeline for their failures. And in that realization, I felt the faint, exhilarating release of freedom. Because boundaries, I had learned, were not just self-protection. They were a declaration of love. Love for myself, love for Andrew, love for Leo, and even, in a strange, paradoxical way, love for my parents. The storm hadn't passed. It never really would. But for the first time, I wasn't being dragged under by it. I was standing tall at the center of the storm, and for the first time, the winds didn't control me. I was sitting on the couch with Leo when the first message came in. Mom, of course. Ruby, we need to talk. It's about the loan. Her words felt hollow, not because they lacked meaning, but because I could sense what was missing. The genuine care, the acknowledgement. I could hear her voice in my head, trying to force the conversation back into a loop of guilt and manipulation, just like always. I didn't respond. Not yet. I had more to process, more to face before I could let myself unravel in front of them again. A few hours later, Dad called. I didn't pick up, not this time. I let his voicemail beep in and waited for the inevitable line. This is childish. That's how he always started when he didn't like the tone of my decisions. It was a strange thing, living with the knowledge that the people who raised you were never as strong as you thought. They were just people, like anyone else, flawed, self-interested, and desperate for the easy way out. But they were also family, and that meant I still owed them something, didn't I? Or did I? After a week of silence, the invitation came. A simple text from Bianca. Can we come by? Talk to you face to face. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. She wanted to fix things. That's what she always did. Pretend. Ignore. Rewrite the story. Make herself the victim, as if she hadn't been the one to call me a sociopath over a birthday party. She was the one who had abandoned me, abandoned Leo, to chase after her own dreams of Instagram-perfect vacations with Mom and Dad, while I was left behind picking up the pieces of their failures. But I agreed. I didn't know why. Maybe I thought I could finally find closure, or maybe it was just because, despite everything, I still loved them. When they arrived at the house, Mom and Dad were together, both looking smaller than I remembered. Mom was holding a small wooden truck for Leo, and Dad had brought a pie from the local bakery. The gestures felt so wrong, hollow, even. Hi, honey, Mom greeted me, smiling too brightly, as if her sunshine could fill up the empty spaces between us. We thought we'd bring something for Leo. Thank you, I said, taking the truck, but feeling nothing. Dad gave me a heavy look, the same look he always had when he was trying to lecture me without saying anything at all. We've been thinking, he began, about the loan. We need to talk about the terms, how we can fix this. I couldn't help myself. The anger, the years of frustration welled up inside me like a tide that couldn't be held back any longer. You don't get it, do you? I said, my voice quieter than it should have been, but still sharp enough to slice through the air. They looked at me, confused. You've been using me, I continued, my pulse quickening. You've been using me for years to cover up Bianca's mistakes, to fix your messes. I've paid the bills, I've covered the loans, I've dealt with your drama, and what do I get in return? Dad opened his mouth, ready to argue, but I held up my hand. I don't want your explanations anymore. I don't want your pity. I don't need to be the one who fixes everything, especially when no one is ever here to fix me. Andrew walked into the room, Leo in his arms, and I felt an overwhelming sense of relief in that moment. This was my family now, the one I had chosen, the one that mattered. Andrew, I said, trying to steady my breath, I've decided. I'm not going to be your safety net anymore. Not for you, not for Bianca, not for anyone. I'm done. Andrew nodded, his steady gaze meeting mine. There was no hesitation in him, no judgment, just quiet understanding. He placed Leo on the floor with a soft chuckle, watching him crawl toward his toys. Mom's smile faltered. You don't mean that, Ruby. You're angry. I understand that. But think of what we've done for you, for your family. I shook my head. What you've done is use me. You've made me feel like I was responsible for fixing every mistake, every financial disaster, every misstep. You've ignored me for years. I was never your priority. Mom's eyes filled with tears, and I saw the familiar look, the one she used when she wanted me to feel guilty, to take her side. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I don't need to be your ATM, I said, my voice trembling but firm. I'm not going to pay your bills anymore, and I'm not going to keep pretending that this family is healthy when all it does is drain me dry. Dad stayed quiet. For once, he didn't defend his actions. Maybe he saw the truth in my words. Maybe he realized that the foundation of this family, our foundation, had been cracked for a long time. Bianca, sitting in the corner with her arms crossed, finally spoke up. You're just going to leave us hanging, aren't you? She sneered. We're drowning and you're just going to walk away? No, I replied calmly, finally looking her in the eye. You have 2 hands. Use them. There was silence, the kind that stretches and weighs down the air between you. Mom sniffled, wiping her eyes. I can't believe you're doing this to us, after everything we've done for you. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I knew it would never be enough. We raised you to be kind, Dad said, his voice softer, tinged with disbelief. You raised me to be useful, I said, meeting his eyes with a clarity that surprised even me. But now I'm being kind. To my own family, to Andrew, to Leo, to myself. The weight of my words settled in the room. They weren't ready to hear them, but I couldn't take them back. I couldn't pretend anymore. I'm not going to be your ladder, I said softly, the words sinking in, like they'd always belonged here. You're going to have to find your own way. With that, I turned away, stepping toward Andrew and Leo. This was my life now. The door clicked softly behind them as Mom and Dad left. The silence that followed was the kind that lingers, both heavy and liberating. It wasn't the quiet of peace, yet, but of something more profound, the quiet of boundaries finally being respected. I stood by the window, watching as their car drove away down the street. Mom, sitting quietly in the passenger seat, staring out the window. Dad, his posture a little slumped, like he had lost more than just an argument. I had no idea what they were thinking, but I didn't care anymore. The weight I had been carrying for years had finally been set down, and I was free. Andrew stood behind me, his hand resting gently on my shoulder, his presence a quiet reassurance. You okay? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. A lump was rising in my throat, but it wasn't a lump of sorrow. It was something else, something I couldn't name just yet. Relief? Peace? Finally, I was able to breathe. For the first time in years, I wasn't wondering when the next phone call would come, demanding more of me. I wasn't wondering if I'd have to bail them out again, or if they'd show up at our door, pretending to care. I was free. I turned to Andrew. Thank you, I whispered, for standing with me, for being my family. He smiled softly and kissed my forehead. Always, Ruby. We're in this together. Later that night, as Leo snuggled up between us, a small, warm bundle of joy, I pulled out my phone. For a moment, I thought about checking the messages, the ones I'd left unread. But then I thought about Leo's tiny fingers grasping at the world with such wonder, about the way he laughed when he knocked over a block tower for the first time. Those were the moments that mattered, not the guilt trips, not the family drama. I opened a new note on my phone instead. The title, Family Boundaries. In a clear, simple bullet point list, I wrote, I am not responsible for anyone's mistakes except my own. I will not be your ATM. I will no longer carry emotional baggage that isn't mine to carry. I will protect my peace, my family, and safe space. No more guilt, no more manipulation. And then I put the phone down, closed my eyes, and listened to Leo's quiet breathing. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be perfect. I knew there would be challenges, but there was something different about the future now. There was clarity. There was hope. I had drawn the line. The next day, I received a message from Bianca. Mom and Dad are upset, Ruby. They feel abandoned. I read it once, twice, and then deleted it. It wasn't my responsibility to fix their relationship with me. It wasn't my job to make them understand or apologize for what they had done. I wasn't going to keep explaining myself. Not anymore. 2 days later, Dad left a voicemail. It was brief. Ruby, I've set up a plan with the lender. We'll be okay. I saved the voicemail, didn't respond, and moved on. The following week, I received a picture message from Mom. It was of a small Hawaiian shirt, the one they had bought for Leo. It was cute. It had pineapples on it, just like the one from their vacation. I smiled, not out of malice, but because I could finally see the difference. I wasn't bitter anymore. I sent a reply, brief and to the point. Thank you. Leo will wear it on a day when we don't mind ruining it. I didn't know how to feel about them anymore. Maybe that was the point. I didn't need to feel anything. Then the unexpected happened. Bianca called me, crying. Ruby, she said, her voice cracking. I lost my job. They're cutting our hours. I don't know what to do. I can't make ends meet. I paused. Part of me wanted to reach out, to offer some kind of support, but I knew better now. I'm sorry, Bianca, that sounds hard, but I can't pay your bills. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. The silence on the other end of the line was thick, uncomfortable. Then she spoke, her voice low. You're really going to leave me like this? I'm not leaving you, Bianca, I replied gently, but firmly. I'm just not going to be your safety net anymore. She hung up without another word. I sat there for a long time after, my phone still in my hand, and thought about all the years I had spent trying to keep everyone afloat. It had never been my job. And now I was finally free. Later, Mom texted me a long apology, one filled with regret, but not actual understanding. She said she hadn't known Leo's first birthday meant so much to me. I laughed softly when I read it, not out of humor, but because I realized how hollow their excuses had always been. I responded, but not with anger or guilt, just a simple message that held all my clarity. Tell me which milestones matter to you, and I'll let you know if we're available. I had made my peace. The days that followed were easier. Andrew and I focused on our little family, on Leo's milestones, on the simple joy of watching him grow. I took pride in the small moments. We'd go on walks to the park, read books, and laugh together, the way a family should. The messages from my parents slowed down. They were still trying, but the tone had changed. Less guilt, more uncertainty. Bianca tried again, sending a message about the twins asking why I didn't visit anymore. I replied honestly, "Tell them the truth. Uncle Jay is at home with Leo. He's the only family I need right now." And it was true. I closed that chapter with a quiet sense of pride. I had protected my peace. I had stood my ground, and I hadn't looked back. Eventually, Mom texted me a brief update. "We've set up a plan with the bank. We'll be okay." And for the first time in years, I believed her. We were okay. Leo laughed in his sleep beside me. Andrew squeezed my hand. And I realized that this was the life I'd always wanted. No more waiting for the storm. No more carrying the weight of other people's messes. Just peace. Just us.